Welcome to Vintage Toys. This is part 2, a Wen-Mac Douglas A24 control line attack bomber. I received one of these for Christmas when I was around 10 years old, and as of January the 5th, 2021, I will be 68 years old. This is not the original one I got for Christmas all those years ago. It's one that I bought via eBay, and it took quite a lot of finding. I'm sure these were more popular in the USA, but in England, most of the ones I used to see were the small Cox 049 powered models. Here it is sat on the bench. It's been hung on the wall for quite a long time, so it's fairly dirty. When I first bought this about 10 years ago, the engine was all gummed up and wouldn't rotate, and I think it's returned to that state. When I first bought it, I freed off the engine, put some Glowplug fuel in it, attached a battery and ran the engine, and it ran well. But now the residue of the Glowplug fuel has gummed up the engine. I would think that quite a lot of engines of this type would have been destroyed over the years by people trying to free off a seized one. This Wen-Mac 049 engine is very small, and the internal parts of the engine are even smaller, and if you put too much pressure on the propeller, you will break some of the internal parts like the connecting rod or even the crankshaft, and more than likely shear off the crank pin. I'm not going to do this. The engine does turn over, but it's very sticky. In this clip, I'm completely flooding it with a can of WD-40. But be warned, this can cause further problems. If you get a hydraulic lock in the cylinder, if you're too heavy-handed, you will just break the internal components. Don't forget that WD-40 is not a particularly good lubricant. It's great for freeing things off, and it's a great water displacer. I've also added some oil into the engine as well. After leaving the WD-40 in the engine for a while, I then turn over the propeller, but gently. Little Glowplug engines, or larger Glowplug engines, can really bite. Over the years I've had quite a lot of propeller cuts on my fingers from various sizes of Glowplug engines. This great little Wen-Mac engine has a device fitted to the front called a rotomatic starter, and it's a spring. You wind the propeller 2 or 3 turns clockwise until you can wind it no more, then you release it and move your fingers out of the way, very quickly. As I mentioned earlier, this particular example of a Douglas A24 attack bomber is not in very good condition. The cockpit is quite opaque, and it shouldn't be, it should be clear. And the paper decals on the sides and on one of the wings are not very good at all. In this clip I'm sticking one of the side decals back in position using some cyanoacrylate adhesive, very sparingly. In this clip I'm applying the adhesive using my scriber. Then I just press it into place with my finger. So that's one little job out of the way. I'm very lucky because I have a photographic memory that goes way back into my childhood. And one of the happiest of my photographic memories was the day we actually flew this plane. Over the Christmas period when I received this model aeroplane, it had been snowing very heavily, so there was no way to fly the aeroplane, or at least take it off. While I'm telling you this story, I'm showing you the bomb that is attached to the bottom of the aeroplane. I fitted it in place with a split pin, but it's really designed so you can pull out a straight pin during flight. At the end of the Christmas period that year, it finally stopped snowing. And one freezing cold morning, I got up very early, looked out of the window and realised it was a perfect flying day. All I needed now was my father to come home from work. My father was a long-distance lorry driver, and he worked nights, so every night he would drive down to Southampton, tip the load, and then drive back. A journey of around 600 miles, and that was 5 days a week. As a 10-year-old, I really didn't understand how this worked. So as soon as he returned home from work, came through the door, I'm there going, "Dad, Dad, Dad, can we fly the plane? Dad, Dad, Dad," etc. Time to look at the controls that allow you to fly this model. The idea is you have 2 20-foot lines, which are made from very thin nylon string. And if you want to drop the bomb, you need a 3rd string, but I never got that far. Anyway, the idea is you tie 2 of the lines to this centre fitting, after first threading the lines through the holes in the wing tip. And as you can see here, they are clearly marked line. The other end of the lines is connected to a handle that you tip backwards and forwards. And this linkage underneath the aircraft is connected directly to the elevator. You will notice there is a good bit more up than there is down. Even though my father was really tired, in fact when I think back he must have been exhausted, in those days we didn't have a car, so we both set off and walked down into the centre of the town, and to a patch of ground just outside the town centre that was known as the feast ground. I don't know why it was called a feast ground. A fair used to come once a year to the town, but it was known as Dewsbury Feast. So there we are, my father and I, on a freezing cold January morning. We connected the control lines, put some fuel in the tank, and the engine flatly refused to start. We took the glow plug out and had a look at it, and it wasn't glowing very brightly. So I suggested connecting a larger battery, which we did. That burnt out the glow plug. And really, at the time, my father must have been quite pleased about this because he must have been so tired. So we walked all the way back from the feast ground, through the town centre, and back home, and my poor father went straight to bed. While I'm telling you this story, you can see what's happening on screen. The engine's really starting to free off now, but I'm still pumping in more WD-40 to flush out any of the gummed up particles of oil. In the fancy Rotomatic starter at the front was lots and lots of gummed up oil. I wiped away every trace of the WD-40, and very carefully, using a miniature blowtorch, I warmed up the cylinder head. After gently warming the cylinder head for a few moments, I wound up the spring starter and let the propeller go. This made a difference, and now it's really starting to sound as it should. At this stage, I was tempted to fill up the tank with glow fuel, but I don't have any, so I couldn't do that, and it's Sunday, and the neighbours will be unhappy. I think I'll get some glow fuel and give it a run. I'll feature that in a future video. In this clip, I'm removing the glow plug to check that it's okay, and while I'm at it, I'll put some more WD-40 into the hole. So the first attempt at flying the plane was a disaster. Later on in the same week, I went down to my local model shop and bought a new glow plug. And here comes the good bit. At the weekend, my father said, "Shall we fly the plane?" And then he said to me, to my surprise, "Well, give me a hand to get the furniture out of the front room." At that time, people had front rooms that they never used, including my family. It was sort of a working class tradition to keep one room really nice. Looking back, this was before the time of carpets. Well, it was in my household anyway. We had coconut matting in the living room and kitchen, and linoleum in the front room. My father screwed a long tubular light fitting into the floor in the centre of the room, and around this strong piece of tube he put a metal ring, which in turn was connected to the lines that were connected to the airplane. So here's the scenario. We're in a room which is in a domestic environment. All that's left in there is a very small two-seater settee, and my father and I are preparing to fly a model aeroplane powered by a Glowplug engine. And it flew very well. Happy days. After we finished, I do remember that my mother wasn't too happy about the oily tyre marks around their front room. Not to mention the screw holes where the bracket was held in place in the middle of the room. So there you have it, a Wen-Mac Douglas A24 attack bomber. And I remember every detail of flying the plane round the front room, including the wonderful smell of burning castor oil. It would appear that in my case, the slight eccentricity is genetic. The plane's back on the workshop wall, and that's it for this episode. Stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it entertaining. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.